We aren't sitting around waiting to die. We're removing the filters, uncensoring how we have been censored by sharing these stories. Welcome, everyone. I am over the moon excited today to bring a very, very special guest on this platform. I met our guest on the screen. If you're watching us on YouTube today, she identifies as Stella Fosse. We met several years ago in a Facebook group for women who were reinventing, reimagining, and redefining what it means to be of a certain age or to be retired or to do both at the same time. And instantly, I fell in love with this woman, and I was aware that she was an author. I purchased her book, and I did something very rare. The weekend that I received the book, I sat down on the couch one morning with a cup of coffee, and I didn't get up till much later in the day when I had turned the last page. I was so charmed by this book. I knew that I needed to know more about the author. So today on the screen with me, Stella Fosse, who is the author of Elegant Charming Bastard. And this book is for sale on Amazon, and it should be on your bookcase because it was a fabulous romp. And it was the first time that I thought about the fact that there should be quality fiction literature for women of my age, and that should be irreverent and saucy and humorous and sexy, but also really well written. So thank you today for being here with us, Stella.
Thank you. What a fabulous introduction. Wow.
It is so easy to gush about you, and for several reasons. Let's be clear. I have a girl crush on you because you're doing something that I aspire to do more of and do better, and that's to be an author. And because I also purchased your book, Aphrodite's Pen, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I began collecting my thoughts, my characters, my storyline for my own Elderoctica romance, steamy, sexy, senior, seasoned woman romance a couple of years ago. Those thoughts are still all in the journal that I started when I was following your program that you had where you were sending us out prompts. And then my own life got a little steamy. And I went through a divorce. I went through a country change. I went through all of the drama and excitement associated with that. I guess I better pick that project back up and get going
Yes,
because
please do.
that's one of the things I would love to talk to you about is your perspective on why there should be more women of our age writing fiction and fantasy and nonfiction because our peers, women like you and me, want to identify with the literature that's available. Stella, tell us a bit more about how you came to really underline that belief and how you've been doing something about it.
Okay. Wow, what a great question. I was in biotechnology for most of my adult life. And I was a writer, but I wasn't writing what I felt like writing. I was writing submissions to the Food and Drug Administration for approval of new medical products. The tallest one I wrote was 32 volumes, and stacked up, it was exactly my height. 32 volumes, 5 feet 6 inches. So that's all well and good. And I did just fine doing that, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to write my own stories. And right before I retired or rewired or repurposed myself, whatever verbiage we want to use,
Yeah.
I read an article in the New York Times book review section by a romance author in her 50s who was advising her sister writers of her age group that if they wanted to get published, they needed to write characters in their 20s. And I thought, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm writing about people my own age and the vivid lives that we lead, because we do. We lead these vibrant, wonderful lives, and it doesn't get talked about enough. That when you turn 60, that around that time, your kids are probably grown, your career is winding down, you feel great, you're doing all kinds of things. And a lot of us are having wonderful, complicated, interesting love lives. And why not show that in fiction? Why not talk about that with one another? So that's how I really started on this path. And in particular, a friend of mine, Lynx Cannon, was starting a reader series around that time. It was called the Dirty Old Women Reader Series, and it was held in a bookstore in Oakland. She invited all her friends who were writers to write erotic stories. This is friends of hers who were over 50, to write erotic stories and come and read them in front of a live audience. I took that as a challenge, and it was scary and it was really fun. One of the best things about it was oftentimes after a reading, the place was always packed. And women who were in their, say, 30s would come up to us and say, thank you. We had no idea. We thought that part of life for women ended at 40, because that's the message they had been getting their entire lives from the culture. It seems to me that one of the best and most enjoyable ways to push back on the gendered ageism we encounter in our culture is for us to create and share our stories. In addition to writing my own stories, I'm really interested in spreading the word and spreading information about how to do this, how to write, how to edit, how to publish, how to market our seasoned, sexy stories.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. We were talking a little bit off air earlier about needing to step up to the responsibility of being role models and trailblazers, because let's face it, there was no manual for this before, because we were all raised with that narrative of go gently into that sweet night, blue-haired lady, right? And
Right,
God,
exactly.
God knows I didn't think about my grandparents having sex, but the fact that they had 10 children, they must have been pretty good at it. We're not just talking about trashy sex for the sake of being provocative. We're talking about highly entertaining literature and drawing other women authors and male, all authors out, saying you have a lifetime of experience which
Mhm,
to draw on to create these works, which serve to entertain, but they also serve to educate. Because
mhm.
you know what? We aren't sitting around waiting to die. We're way too busy living full, vibrant lives and pushing the limits.
We certainly are.
Cool.
And you're right. It's wonderful how much we have this great combination of a lifetime of experience plus our imaginations to draw upon. One of the things I talk about in my new book is autofiction, which is a combination of autobiography and fiction, where you can take, say, a person you knew when you were in your 40s and a situation, a conflict that came up when you were in your 50s in a setting that was very dear to you in your 20s or your 60s, and put those things together and combine them with imaginative elements to create a story that's just yours, that no one else could create, because each of us has this incredible library in our minds of experiences and feelings and people we've known and places we've been and conflicts and interesting situations that we've encountered and overcome. We can draw on all that to create this magical thing, this narrative that's only ours. Yes, it's an absolutely precious thing that we have as older adults that we can draw upon to create fiction or any other kind of art. I have friends who've switched from corporate careers into being painters. There are all kinds of creative things that we can be doing at this point in life. And we are empowered to do it because, again, some of our responsibilities that we had for much of our adult lives may be behind us or may at least be winding down. So it's a really fabulous time of life.
I agree wholeheartedly. And you just introduced something that I did want to talk to you about, and that is the controversy today about AI in writing. What you just described, that scenario of what did you call it? Autofiction
Yeah,
is impossible with AI, because you have to have had those various life experiences to draw on to create that blended narrative and have those perspectives. It doesn't just come out of a can. It's not
no,
automated. It's a
no.
beautiful soup that you're talking about. And I love that idea. And it also titillates me to think about which part of me will they think is the real me that I've written about, right?
That's
Oh, that's
right.
cool. I
That's right.
um I love, and I'm going to share, of course, in the show notes, your contact information and the links to your books and your bio. But I was intrigued when I was preparing for our show that there was something in your bio that just stood out so much to me, and you're just touching on it now. You said, "This is our voice. This is our opportunity to let others in on the secret that women past middle life are vibrant and alive." I just love this, that when we live in sin, we are blissfully sinning, that when we marry, we want more than a companion, that whether single or in a relationship, our sexuality is our innate birthright. And I thought,
Mhm.
again, yay. Let's blow those paradigms up. Let's change the narrative, who any of us are, whatever our gender is or whatever our preference is. It's about we get to choose the character and how they show up in our lives. Very,
Exactly.
very cool.
Yes.
So take me to a little more, because what has also come out of this is that, as I am understanding, so you, after a professional, a long-running career, technically writing, and by the way, I'm 1 inch taller than you, so you would have had to write one more volume.
Good
Um,
thing I'm only 5'6" then.
okay, so now that we are comparing numbers, I didn't ask you at the outset of the interview one of my favorite questions, and I'm thanking Diane von Furstenberg for reframing a question that was often in our generation frowned upon asking a lady. Instead of asking how old you are, Diane suggested that we say, "How long have you lived, Stella?"
Hmm. Hmm. I have lived for 70 years and I will celebrate my 71st birthday next month. So I've lived almost 71 years.
Well, great congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
celebrating my 70th next month.
Mm,
So maybe there's a party somewhere together in the future for us, right?
that would be great.
Cool.
That would be great.
All right.
And the entire decade, as I look back now on the entire decade of my 60s, it was perhaps the best decade of my life so far. So I have every hope that my 70s will turn out to be just as great. And the thing is, nobody tells you this. Nobody tells you that your 60s can be absolutely fantastic. When I look back on it, I published my first novel. I fell in love with the man I've now been with for 9 years. My children thrive, and I was getting to do exactly what I wanted to do, probably for the first time in my life. Next book, not the one that's about to publish, but the one after that, is going to be a collection of essays that I wrote during my 60s. I'm going to call it What to Expect When You're 60, Adventures in the Secretly Wonderful Decade, because that's what it is. The 60s are the secretly wonderful decade. And it's about time we shared that secret. But that book's going to be a while. That one's going to be a bit. I still have to put that one together.
And you continue to live it, and which I think is the other thing that I recognize just listening to you talk right now. Being a seasoned woman, it gives us this advantage that we're just continuing to live it and adjust the seasoning, right? My
Mm.
60s were also remarkable. My mother died at age 59. I really wasn't thinking much forward to that. And of course, we were brought up to you start to fall apart at 40. Once perimenopause sets in and menopause, like it's the end of the story. This is the other thing that I appreciate so much about what you're doing. You're writing new stories, both in real life by sharing with other women how to tell stories, but also sharing the literature that are examples that people might go, I can see myself in that character. Maybe
Mhm.
I could explore that life. I have to say, I think my 60s, yeah, were the best decade up to this point, but I
Mhm.
have a strong suspicion my 70s are going to top that.
Mm.
I have an epic list started. I don't believe in using the term a bucket list because the connotation for me is rather negative. It's disappointing
Right.
at the end. So instead, I choose to live an epic life and to have epic experiences. And when I started making the list, I thought there's a lot of fun to be had here, right?
Mm.
A lot of experience to have, a lot of growth. And when in doing so, younger people are saying to me, I am glad you are showing us how this should be
Mm.
lived, right? Uh,
That's
dinner with,
great.
I had dinner with my granddaughter and a friend of hers last night, and they were saying, like, wow, this is the way it should be. Alive, vibrant, desiring to continue to learn new things and have new experiences and grow.
Mhm. At
Okay,
the same time, though, I have to say I do have an anti-bucket list. I
good.
have a list of things I won't put up with anymore.
I'm glad that you gave me a little segue there because right now I'm a few weeks from publishing The Fuck It Journey,
Ah, wonderful.
a journal to joy. And it's about exactly that, the things that we say, hell no, never again. We are aligned. Anti bucket list and my fuck it list.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
just for those that are concerned that they might not be able to Google that, they'll get censored or something. It is spelled with a PH.
Very good.
Okay.
So I bet we have some of the same things on that list. For example, no more high heel shoes.
Ah, no, yeah, no, done. Uh,
Done. So done.
no more playing small.
Yeah.
No more apologizing for things that I don't own.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are the very specific things like no more wearing clothes that are tight and uncomfortable, and, or
Mm-hmm.
including those shoes, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the other part that I appreciate in my 60s and 70s and the company I keep is that we are now looking at things very selectively and saying, Not doing that anymore,"
Mm.
because then that opens us up to doing so much more than we ever did before.
Exactly. We get to choose our priorities.
So,
Nobody else is setting our priorities at this point.
no. And whether you want to be in a relationship, coupled, single, exploring, whatever, it's everything is there for us. It's an option, and life has become a wonderful buffet now, right? Or a
Mhm.
charcuterie platter of living. You get to sample
Yeah,
all kinds of things.
that's true.
Yeah. But take me back for a bit because my audience, I want them to understand this. Technical writer, Then you explored some writing exercises and some fiction writing.
Mhm.
Is that what led you to helping other writers find their voice and their process?
When we had our Dirty Old Women presentations, our reading series, one of the things that came out of that was a desire to write together. And so my friend Lynx Cannon and I started a writing group that we called the Elderoctica Writing Group. We met once a month. We invited friends who were also writing sexy stories, and we got together and we had prompts and shared what we wrote in real time. This is pre-pandemic, so all this was in person.
Right.
And we just generally had a great time. And then Lynx decided to publish a collection of the best stories, or some of the really great stories from the Dirty Old Women writing series. So that's out there. That's called the Dirty Old Women Anthology. And then I decided that I would start putting together stories and interviews and also writing prompts and information about how to set up an Elderotica writing group. And I went to a writing and art retreat organized by a friend of mine. And I was sitting next to a woman I had not met before. And I told her that I was putting this book together. And she said, "Oh, I work at North Atlantic Books, and we would like to publish a book like that." So I didn't do a book proposal. I didn't reach out to agents, none of that, none of the things that people typically do for a first book. And that's how Aphrodite's pen, The Power of Writing Erotica After Midlife, came to be. So that book came out several years ago. And then meanwhile, I started doing more writing. And when the pandemic hit, a friend of mine who was locked down in a senior community called me and said, "We have been told that if we leave the community and we don't come back with a doctor's note, we won't be let back in." And she had spent a lot of money to get into this place and buy a unit, but it wasn't the money that worried her. It wasn't the possibility of getting sick that worried her. What really bothered her was, how is this going to affect my dating life? And this is a woman in her late 70s. And I took that as a challenge. I decided that I would start writing stories about how women in a lockdown senior community could still have an active dating life. So I wrote about friendly vampires coming to visit these ladies, and time travelers, and ghosts, and people calling others on the Ouija board, people from other universes. So I just had a grand time. That's how I spent my pandemic, was writing these stories. And that came out the next year, came out in 2020. It's called the Erotic Pandemic Collection. It now includes some stories, other stories in addition to the ones in that senior community. So the Erotic Pandemic Collection came out. My first novel, Brilliant Charming Bastard, that you mentioned having read, was about three women in biotech who are scientists who discover they're all dating the same liar who is stealing their ideas for his invention, and they decide to get some very smart revenge. So that book came out. And then I decided that I wanted to write a romance novel. I had thought that Brilliant Charming Bastard was a romance novel, but when I looked into what the genre requirements are, I realized that it was not. It didn't really match the requirements that dedicated romance readers expect when they read a romance novel. So I looked into the genre and I put together Vampires of a Certain Age, which takes this idea of an older woman having a significant love life to the max, because the woman is actually 500 years old and falls in love with a woman in her 50s. So that was my first romance novel. And then I decided that I wanted to share with other women how to put together a romance novel. And that's the book that's about to come out this month, which is called write and sell a seasoned romance, and it takes you all the way through. It tells you what are the genre expectations, how do you write a romance novel, gives you ideas for the premise that will work with characters our age, and then goes through the editing process, takes you through all the possibilities for publishing, and then lots and lots of ideas for marketing. So I've tried to do both things. I've tried to create my own stories and at the same time encourage other women of a certain age to get into this fun revolution and create their stories too.
It is serendipity, synchronicity, or whatever you want to say, divine kismet that I just launched Seasoned Women Serious Business podcast a few weeks ago and then reconnected with you. Actually, I think I saw a LinkedIn post about how to write and sell a well-seasoned romance, and I thought, oh, good heavens, if that is not a sign that I need to call Stella and say, we should talk about your book on the podcast, because you have a business and you are doing seriously good work with it and supporting others, but also you haven't put all of this work into it for it not to be sustainable financially. I know that you tax all the prisms of your brain. But so I just love the fact that we can share this with all women, all people. Life will just surprise you if you open up and take a chance.
Mhm.
And that is why I pushed to have this interview now, because at the date of recording, in just a couple of weeks, Write and Sell a Well-Seasoned Romance, love that, will be on Amazon. The publication release date is August 29th. But if you are as excited as I am about this, you will go immediately to Amazon and book a pre-sale purchase of the book, because I'm on the list. I'm so excited. I
Mm.
would love us to have Amazon say, whoa, what's happening on over here with all these seasoned women? Because we have sold out capacity of this book. And I would love you, all my listeners, to do so and spread the word. And of course, we'll put all the important links in the podcast notes, because spread the word around. Let's start a revolution of rogue seasoned women writers.
Mm. Amen. Thank you.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Okay, we're going to recap all of the titles of the books, but one question came up for me when you were talking about it. Nick, why did I think that was Pandemic Ball? Or
Mm.
is there a difference?
The the original collection was the Erotic Pandemic Ball, but I had some other stories that were about seasoned women and their love lives in the pandemic that took place in New York City, excuse me, that took place in California. The setting for Erotic Pandemic Ball is an imaginary senior community in North Carolina where I live. But I had written stories about other places and how women were finding love during the pandemic. So we reissued the Erotic Pandemic stories with these additional stories. So now it's called the Erotic Pandemic Collection.
Super.
So if you want all the stories, check out that
Get the
edition.
collection. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I love the tagline, the most fun you can have with your mask on. So so good. And I also would like everybody to be aware you have an incredible blog series. Seriously, today with so many blogs going on, there are very few that I look forward to receiving in my inbox and read every single word. While you're waiting for Stella's most recent book to come out, subscribe to her blog also, because it's educational, it's entertaining, and I really like that you push back on a lot of stuff.
Thank you. And
Hey,
I also publish on the 10th of each month. I publish a guest essay from an author, a woman author over 50. If any of your listeners are interested, have a book coming out and would like to use that as part of their publicity, please get in touch. The new one that just came out is from Lynn Spreen, who took up writing after her career was over, started publishing books, and has done extremely well. And she talks all about the ins and outs of that experience in the new essay that's just out. It's
I'm
called
like,
Living the Dream
living
by
the dream.
Spreen.
And
It's up on my website. And I also share out the blogs and guest blogs on my social media platform. So folks can find them on LinkedIn, X, and Facebook as well.
okay. Stella, do you get pushback from people close to you that you are doing too much, that you're working too hard at your age or for your health? How do people look at you and go, how is this possible that she's doing all this?
I don't think I get pushback. I have 4 grown children. I think they're a little startled at how much I do compared to their other parents and grandparents. Their grandparents, for the most part, are no longer here, but their other parents and step parents, I think they're surprised, but they also really get it. My daughters, in particular, are very clear that what I'm doing is a benefit for women of all ages. They're very happy that all this is happening. So that's really wonderful for me. I wasn't sure, frankly, when I switched from technical writing to, at first, I was very much into writing erotica. At this point, what I'm writing is more romance and women's fiction. And I wasn't sure, frankly, how they would react, but they're very positive about it. So that's a wonderful thing.
There weren't any gulps in the beginning thinking, oh, mom.
There was a little gulp here and there, but they're into it now. So
Excellent.
that's a
Excellent.
marvelous thing.
Good, because I'm going to make sure my kids listen to this section of the podcast carefully and preparing them for, yes. So what's next? What's next for you?
Next, between now and when the book comes out, the very next thing that's happening is I'm having cancer surgery. So that's a thing that's happening on the 19th, which is a really interesting event in the middle of a book launch, I have to say. I decided to leave my book launch date where it was when I found out that I did have cancer and was going to need surgery. And at times, frankly, I have thought to myself, what a foolish decision. But on the other hand, it distracts me. It gives me something else to think about. And I can use the techniques that I talk about in my own book to set up the kind of marketing campaign that doesn't need my hands-on participation every day. So when I'm first recovering, there will still be updates coming out. There'll be memes that I created on Canva with excerpts from early interviews of the book. There'll be quotes from the book. There'll be book trailers. And of course, this wonderful podcast will come out. So lots of things are going to happen to make sure that the word gets out about the book. And in a way, it demonstrates the very thing I'm talking about in my new book, which is that you can set up a marketing campaign for your own book, a marketing and publicity campaign that fits your own circumstances and your own skills, and make that happen. And it doesn't need to be expensive. It can be exactly what you want it to be. It's a mixed bag, but we are doing the absolute best with it that we can.
I, first of all, from me, from all of my network, we're there to support your full and quick recovery, rebound, because we're going to need you to keep guiding us forward in our own journey of writing. and just being a freaking awesome role model. It's inevitable that we will have some health issues. I'm 10 weeks today post hip replacement, never felt better. And we take it in stride. We have incredible medical resources around us. We build our support networks. In fact, that was my podcast last week, and my LinkedIn article is building your own emotional and inspirational trampolines and doing that very purposefully and living with the expectation to recover and go on to continue to fulfill all of these epic list items that we have, right? The list just keeps getting longer. I don't want to say wish you well because I don't have any doubt you are vibrant and strong and resilient and you're doing all the right stuff. And today, medical processes and technologies have advanced so much that the word cancer doesn't have to be as terrifying as it is. Not that it's not serious, but damn, it doesn't stand a chance against you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you very much.
and
Lovely.
but let's be real, right? We can be busy and creative, and we create this public persona of having everything perfect and having all this energy and all this stuff. But the truth is that we are still human beings and
Hmm.
we are human living in these bodies. And so stuff will come along, but mindset is incredibly important for everything that we encounter.
It's
So,
true.
and somehow I suspect some more writing will come from this experience in multiple genres. You're going to weave it into the stories that you write. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
so that'll be interesting to find out where that turns up in the next publications. I also want to commend you and thank you for having set up a business process because I am a business person. And so I like to incorporate that in our conversations. There's all the fun stuff, the aspirational stuff, the growth, the evolutionary advantages of being a woman of a certain age. But then there's also the sustainability aspect. And for you to walk people through with your book how you support the sale of the book, the how-tos, explaining the technologies and the platforms that we didn't even talk about 20 years ago, right?
It's very true. It's very true. And that's one of the things that I cover is the evolution of the publishing industry.
Yep.
We have seen incredible changes from when we were in our, say, in our 20s.
Hmm.
The traditional publishing industry has had its hat handed to it by Amazon, by print on demand,
Yep.
by all the other places where you can now sell an independent book. And next up will be people selling books on their own websites and circumventing places like Amazon. It's fascinating to see how all this is unfolding. And yes, I think pulling all that information together in one place and providing it to people I hope is a real service. We want to encourage as many women as possible to take up this challenge to join this fun revolution and create our own stories that push back on and subvert the dominant paradigm. Because we know the way we're living,
Hmm.
we know how much fun we're having, and it's important to share that out.
We're removing the filters, right? Uncensoring how we have been censored by sharing these stories. I love the fact that you are sharing the perspective on the platforms and the marketing machine in a very general way and without an agenda. Because this is the challenge today with it is so much information being dumped on us because of social media. It's hard to sort out now. Like, who's telling me something because it serves their agenda? I like that you're offering a broader look at and putting it in the context, which will be relevant for someone who's thinking, I'd like to write, I'd like to sell my story. And we don't all have to rush out and spend tens of thousands of dollars to be coached by somebody. And conversely, bullshit on the you can write a successful book in a weekend story. I because let's be honest, right?
Very
Okay,
true.
I want to keep talking to you forever and ever, but on the other hand, I also want to get this episode edited and published because I'm very excited for this opportunity to be supporting you on your surgery journey and recovery, and then to wherever book launch success globally. But
Thank you.
before I let you go, two questions, and then I'd like welcome you to share any other thoughts that you have. Number one, this is just for fun. And this might be a little challenging because you're a very public persona, but is there something that you might share with us about you that we might not be able to find on Google?
Sure. So many things. How about
Ooh,
this one?
okay.
I once applied for a job at Doubleday back when there was a Doubleday
Mhm.
and got on the elevator along with someone from HR. And there was one other person on the elevator, Jackie Kennedy Onassis.
Wow.
And she smiled at me and I smiled at her. And when the HR guy and I got off the elevator, I said, that woman looked so much like Jackie Kennedy. And he said, that's because that was Jackie Kennedy. She's working here as an art book editor.
No.
Briefly, she worked as an art book editor at Doubleday, making these great art coffee table books. So that was one of those memories that absolutely sticks with you your whole life, is
Oh,
being this close to Jackie Kennedy and sharing a smile.
yeah, such an elegant woman, sophisticated. She would have been ideally suited for that job, right? But
Mm-hmm.
to be in that same airspace as her, that's thank you. That was a great one. And there's one heck of a woman example for swimming against the current in her life, right?
Yes.
Cool. The other thing I would like to ask, and again, this may be a challenge because I'm going to ask you just to pick one, but if you were to share one brief pearl of wisdom that we can share with our audience, what comes to mind?
I would say to women of our age in particular, and women in general, to get out of your own way. We have been told so many things about ourselves over the decades. We've been handed so many stereotypes. It's impossible not to internalize some of it. It's really impossible. We grew up with the Disney princesses and the Disney bad witch older women characters. How could you not internalize the desire to be a princess and not a dragon lady? But at our point in life, it's important to set aside that inner critic, to find a way to amuse her and have her go off and do something else. If you're writing a book, consider it as play. Your first draft is your play space. And let the inner critic know that when it's time to proofread, she can have a free hand. But for now, if she could please step aside and let you have your play space. Play is so important for us at this age.
Yes, we might be serious about business, but we don't have to live seriously all the time. And laughter is so very important, especially when we look in the mirror. You're so right. Having been raised on fairy princesses and perfectly behaved, well coiffed little girls, it's time to look in the mirror and say, I am the fairest of them all.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. And we get to be creative. We get to play. That's
Absolutely.
not just the province of children, it's for us too.
Oh my God, we can teach them. We can teach those kids so much about having fun, right?
We could.
Stella, I would love if we could book your calendar a few months after the book launch and your robust return to health. But for now, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners?
We've covered so much. I'm just really thrilled. I think the only other thing I can think of is that when we're playing and creating, we get to think big. We get to think beyond our books. Think about the media. Think about movies. Think about performing your work in public. We get to be very visible at this point in life. There's a wonderful program called the Writers Lab, which is funded by Oprah and Meryl Streep and some other actresses of a certain age, actors of a certain age. And this is a program that invites women over 40 to submit their movie scripts. So as you're writing your novel, your stories, think about that you can potentially get your story out into an even wider audience. We can change the narrative in so many ways, including the very public presentation of our work in media. So keep that in mind as well. Let's all think big as we're creating and playing.
Oh my goodness, we're creating the future.
We are.
Thank you. All right. I am going to follow up, check in on you. I'm excited about sharing this opportunity with everybody who's listening to pre-buy, write and sell a well-seasoned romance and hopefully find an opportunity in the future to have it signed by the author when we find her out there. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.